Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about spellcasting traditions. Seeing as different spellcasting classes don't have their own unique spell lists anymore, like in Pathfinder 1st Edition and D&D 5th Edition, and instead select from one of 4 different spellcasting traditions, those traditions are incredibly important to how a spellcaster feels to play, because all of your spells are drawn from that overall list. I'd honestly go so far as to say that what spellcasting tradition a caster has access to is only marginally less important than what class they are actually playing in terms of how they feel during a fight. So let's get into it, since this is incredibly important when it comes to playing a spellcaster. So before we get into what makes each particular tradition unique, I need to say that I don't think that there are any bad spellcasting traditions. There has been a lot of discussion online about spellcasting traditions over the years, and while I do think that the arcane and primal spell lists have a bit of an advantage considering that elemental spells are really general and very good, I don't think the difference is crippling or anything between any of the traditions. But anyway, let's start talking about the arcane list, shall we? Arcane spells are super varied, and the whole arcane tradition is probably the best when it comes to a mix of damage and utility spells. If a wizard can stereotypically cast it, then it's on the arcane list. We've got fireballs, magic missiles, teleportation, haste, and all different types of goodies. Arcane spellcasters will almost always have a spell for any given job, and they absolutely have the best utility spells in the game. Of course, while that is all lovely, the arcane list is also the only spell list in the game that completely lacks access to healing magic. If you're bleeding out on the ground, there isn't really anything that a wizard or a magus can do for you. They do have buffs to make it less likely that their allies will end up in that situation to begin with. But no matter what buffs you have on hand, eventually someone is going to be bleeding out, and there won't be any spells that can help them on the arcane list. The occult list shares a lot of spells with the arcane tradition, but it has a ton of its own flair. Many of the unique or standout spells from the occult list are spooky as hell or deal with messing with people's minds, both for good and for ill, but always good for you. Heroism is an incredibly good buff spell, and it's far from the only good buff on the occult list. Plus, for every good buff spell there's probably an excellent debuff spell to go alongside it. There's also a lot of fun out-of-combat utility, some pretty nice healing spells, especially Soothe. Soothe is like the second best healing spell in the game, and tons of spells that are probably going to make your party question whether or not you're a good guy. And that's a compliment, by the way. The downside of the occult tradition is simple. There just aren't a huge amount of damaging spells. There is some overlap with the arcane list, but the occult list doesn't really get any of the super nice blasting spells. Considering that one of the niches that spellcasters can almost always do better than martials is area damage, that's pretty rough. There are some nice occult damage spells, but they often do mental damage, which is a pretty common damage type for enemies to be immune to. So while they do have options, they just aren't always as good. The Divine List is one of the more contentious spell lists, though I do absolutely believe that it's gotten a lot better over time as Paizo has released more spells. The Divine List has a lot of good buff, debuff, and healing spells, in addition to some situationally excellent blasting spells, but we'll talk about those a little bit more later. Especially once you get to high levels, Divine Spellcasters can start pulling off some really just crazy stuff like bringing back the dead, and literally calling down a sword of judgment to hover over an enemy so that whenever they do something you don't really like, they get stabbed by the sword of God. Regarding the blasting spells that I mentioned earlier though, it's one of the double-edged swords of the Divine List. They have access to the best alignment, positive, and negative damage in the entire game. But those damage types are very particular, and they're not going to be useful in every combat. Alignment damage has the chance of creatures just being entirely immune to it because they are not the opposite of that alignment. But if you're using good damage when you're fighting fiends, they're just going to absolutely melt. With positive and negative damage, In the right situations, those are really, really nice, but if you're fighting living creatures with positive damage or undead creatures with negative damage, or just constructs in general, you're not going to be doing anything. Basically, depending on the campaign, the Divine List is either a very lackluster option for a blaster caster, or they're going to be deleting powerful fiends from existence because that is what the Divine List does. So basically, talk to your GM before you start preparing divine blasting spells. Finally, the Primal List covers all things nature, which happens to overlap a lot with the Divine List and the Arcane List. Primal spellcasters will have a lot of healing magic at their disposal, in addition to being able to rain absolute destruction all around them with tons of elemental spells just like arcane spellcasters. The place where I see primal spellcasters standing out a bit, though, is with area control spells. These aren't like completely broken or anything, but being able to control where people move by putting up a wall of thorns is a really great way to guide how a fight progresses. Honestly, the Primal spell list feels like the most well-rounded spellcasting tradition overall, and it doesn't really have any downsides that I can think of. I guess that a lot of the really cool spells will require that you're around nature to be used, and that means that they aren't always applicable since, you're not going to find many trees underground, but that's about it in terms of downsides that I can think of. But anyway, what spellcasting tradition you're using is really, really important, but all of them are absolutely viable. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses, and none of them are definitively the best for every circumstance. Plus, different classes can augment or cover for any weaknesses that I've mentioned, like how the Psychic is an occult spellcaster, and I mentioned that occult spells are generally not good for blasting, but Psychics do not have problems with being able to deal damage. So go out there and make some informed decisions as to what kind of spellcasting tradition you want to use. Thanks for watching. I know that this was a super general overview, but I don't often play spellcasters, so this is the best I've got. Let me know down below in a comment if you think that I got anything wrong, and talk about what you think each spell list has going for them and maybe some standout spells for people to consider. While you're down there, please consider subscribing and joining the channel as a member, because really, it is the best way to support me, and I am incredibly thankful for everyone who is willing and able to do that. But regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.